What's up, YouTube? This is Carrie from Side Tripping with Carrie, and I've got a murder mystery for you guys today. It's from 1967. It's really who killed Carmen Gaul. Carmen was a 26-year-old mother of two young children. She was a legal secretary at a fairly prominent Phoenix law firm that still around, or at least I think it's still around, called Jennings Strauss. And she was also a model. She did some modeling and was an actress. She acted in some plays along with, believe it or not, Nick Nolte, who was during the late 60s kicking around Phoenix. And but anyway, she unfortunately was murdered in 1967, July 19th, they believe. And I wanted to show you guys where she lived, and then we're going to go out to her final resting place at St. Francis Catholic Cemetery here in Phoenix. All right, I'm showing you 2840 East Osborne Road here in Phoenix, and this is the apartment complex where Carmen lived with her mother and her two small children back in 1967. So on the evening of July 19th, 1967, Carmen had gone out with her boyfriend. She was divorced at this point, and she'd gone out with a boyfriend by the name of Peter Van Binschoten, and she dropped him off at his apartment, which was I want to say around 7th Avenue and Northern, which is in Phoenix. And she told him that she needed to get back home. It was around 10 p.m. She needed to get back home to her kids. So she drove back over near her apartment complex. I'm going to show you where her car was found. And, you know, obviously she's never showed up. Her mother, she didn't come home. The mother called Peter, who, you know, started looking for her, and then sooner or later they called the police. Carmen was actually missing for almost a full month before her body was found. But just a little bit more about Carmen's background. Carmen was born in Amarillo, Texas, but she grew up in Emporia, Kansas. And there she was like a local beauty queen, a very good looking woman, and married a guy from Emporia by the name of Jack Gaul, and they had a couple of children. At some point they moved to Phoenix, and the marriage unfortunately kind of broke down and they divorced. So, you know, Carmen's kind of restarting her life with these two kids, and her mom moves out to Phoenix, I guess probably to just help her out, get situated, that kind of thing. And so the mom moved to Phoenix and was living with Carmen and her children. So getting back to July 19th, again, she doesn't show up. I'm showing you, you know, it looks kind of like a vacant lot over there, but there was a school there. There's a school there now, across the way, but that school obviously wasn't there in 1967. That school, I want to say, was built like in the 80s. And this vacant lot, I'd say about 2 years ago, there was a school there, older, there from the 60s. And I remember when they tore it down, and I was asking myself, well, man, are they going to build a new school over there or what? And again, it seems like it's been about 2 years and they haven't built anything there. So there was an entranceway over here. Let me show you guys. And I want to say that was kind of the entrance to the school parking lot, as I recall. There's the crosswalk. and that led into the school's parking lot, the school that was here. And it was here, slightly north of Osborne on 28th Street, where Carmen's 1964 Chevy 4-door sedan was found. Now, the last people that saw Carmen, saw her alive, other than the killer, obviously, were a couple of people that lived around this neighborhood that remembered seeing a woman and a man in the school parking lot in a car, in a blue Chevelle. That was, Carmen was either sitting in, or a woman and a man were either sitting in her car or that blue Chevelle, but the cars were near each other. So what happened next was, again, Carmen was missing for almost a month. Her body was found near what's now where the Mayo Clinic is located now, in a rural, it used to be a rural part of Scottsdale. It was found by some kids doing some rock hunting, and she was found underneath a Palo Verde tree. And I believe that's right there, that's a Palo Verde tree. So something similar to that. And it was a brutal murder. It had to have been somebody that had a lot of animosity or hate, or is just some kind of, sicko, almost like, serial killer mentality. But what leads me to think it wasn't a serial killer was that this type of murder was isolated, but whoever did it, they had a lot of rage. Carmen was actually killed by blows to the head with rocks and boulders weighing as much as 25 pounds. The news reports at the time, the sheriff deputy that went out there, the Maricopa County Sheriff's deputy, that detective that investigated it, pretty much said that her head was smashed in, and that's a quote. And it's just a shame. Again, she was a very beautiful woman, seemed to be very well liked by folks. I mean, I read online, there was, I even read a legacy tribute to her today from a gal that went to high school with her way back when in Kansas, and talked about how funny she was, and was a real character. So, the sheriff's office began an investigation. They talked to everybody that was connected to Carmen. You've got to imagine suspect number one was the ex-husband, Jack Gaul. But they put him on a lie detector, and he passed, along with several of her boyfriends. I guess she was dating a few people here and there. They talked to people, obviously that she worked with. They spoke to people that she acted with. Matter of fact, they even questioned Nick Nolte, star of 48 Hours fame. And, it wasn't, I want to make sure that this is clear, he was never a suspect. But they talked to everybody. I mean, they talked to other actresses who were acting with Carmen, maybe just to get background information, or when was the last time you saw her, things like that. Anything that maybe could have sparked any kind of memory that could have helped with the investigation. So next we're going to head out to St. Francis Catholic Cemetery, where Carmen is laid to rest. We're back at St. Francis Catholic Cemetery here in Phoenix. Going to visit the final resting place of Carmen Gaul. Getting back to kind of the investigation and what happened next after Carmen's body was found on August 12th, 1967. The case was in the news quite a bit. in Phoenix during that time. I mean, you had a beautiful woman murdered gruesomely, so it was kind of a newsworthy subject at the time. And it stayed in the news. Surprisingly, at least to me, this would have seemed to have been the type of case that would have been solved fairly quickly. Again, somebody with that much rage and animosity against somebody who, you know, conceivably really didn't have very many enemies would seem like it'd be easy to solve, but it wasn't. And, you know, the case went cold. So you can look back on like newspapers.com, about every 10 years the story would pop up and people would say, you know, I wonder who did it, or hey, are there any leads, this and that. In the 90s, I want to say around 1997, around that era, the New Times, the Phoenix New Times, did an article about Carmen, and they profiled a book that's since gone out of print, titled Who Killed Carmen. And the lady that wrote the book, I believe her name was Rose Veit, was a friend of Carmen. She used to work at Jennings Strauss. They were legal secretaries together. And she kind of wrote not a self-published book, but a locally published book that's now out of print and kind of hard to find. I actually am going to try to find that book and buy it, because I'm really interested in this story. But I guess for the longest time, this case was the, I guess, longest unsolved murder still being investigated. And I don't know if it still holds that title, but I'm almost positive that it's no longer being investigated. The detective at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office who handled Carmen's case has since retired, and the case is just cold. At this point, to put things into perspective, Carmen, had she lived and been alive today, she'd be 82, which coincidentally is how old Nick Nolte is, which is crazy to believe that he's that old. You know, I guess my biggest memory of him is from 48 Hours, and it's hard to fathom a guy being that old. But Carmen's youngest child is my age, so that really puts it in perspective for me. Again, you know, the case, I don't know whether it's ever going to be solved. Maybe DNA, I don't know. But here's the thing. Newspaper accounts say that Carmen's clothes, undergarments, or clothes were not disturbed. Reading between the lines, that means that she wasn't sexually assaulted. At least that's what's been made public. So, you know, I don't know how much DNA they're going to find. You know, I mean, there still could be some, I guess, I don't know, on the rocks or on her clothes, something like that. Maybe they catch a break if they submit that evidence in and have it retested. I don't know, but you know, you've got to imagine that there's a good chance that the killer has died at this point, or is very elderly. But you know, if he's alive, he needs to pay the price. But you know, it's just a shame what happened to this woman. And here is Carmen's final resting place. You know, at least it's in a nice cemetery. It's in a peaceful part of the cemetery, and you know, she made it to St. Francis far too early. So rest in peace to Carmen. Rest in peace to her ex-husband, Jack. He passed away like 2 years ago. And, you know, my sympathies to Carmen's mother, who passed away in the 90s, and to Carmen's children, who, from what I understand, are still living. And, yeah, my condolences. And, you know, if there's a way, you know, you pray for a way for justice to be served in this case, but you know, I just don't know if it's going to happen at this late stage in the game. In any event, folks, that's going to end this particular video. If you like the video, please give it a like. Leave some comments. You know, who do you think would be the primary suspect or suspects here in this case? If you like the channel, please consider subscribing. I've got other videos up. If you haven't, if this is the first video you've seen, check out the channel. You know, leave comments. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. I'm still on a mission to get to 500. It's slow going. It seems like I'm stuck on about 390. But if you can help out, pass along links to the channel, get people that you might think would be interested in the channel to subscribe, I would be sincerely appreciative. All right, so we'll see you on the next one, guys.